So I'll just do, I think I have only 5 minutes, so I'll be really fast. I am going to have a session tomorrow. I'm going to take these off. Tomorrow to actually do a learn by doing session, because ultimately everything that I think we just heard from Professor Campbell is about experiential, engaging, user-generated content. So we'll experience that tomorrow. But just really quickly, when we talk about kind of the future of learning and technology, next slide, please. Yep, next slide, please. Just next slide, yeah. Is really about the idea of growing knowledge into being, because especially theological content, it's not about what we know and consuming information one way, but it's really learned by, not just learned by knowing, but learned by doing, and then ultimately learned by teaching. And then when we do learn by doing, it becomes part of our being, right? So NOBE stands for grow knowledge into being, because it's all about bringing the content to life. And especially because all of you are creating life-giving content and transformational content, there's such a powerful opportunity to do that. I think we're struggling to get to the next slide. No worries, I'll just keep going. So I think when we start talking about content, and I think especially what we just heard, everything has been traditionally one way. So even though we digitized, many of us moved to, in fact, this presentation, which was still one way, and even my presentation right now is one way. Right? And so even though we're using technology, it's still a one-way conversation. It's not even a conversation, it's a one-way presentation. So what I'm hoping is that as we start to leverage technologies, and tomorrow I'll be demonstrating that, how we basically, all of you will have in your phones the content in your pocket, like a digital guide, and then we'll experience it together so that you can real life, oh thank you so much, go through the content together and really engage it and show you what it means, and not just talk about it, but show it. Because this presentation is still a one-way, right? So I think we acknowledge that, but we want to see how we can start to evolve and leverage technology to make it truly interactive and asynchronous. For those who couldn't make it, they could still engage and participate in this experience as if they were here. And I think we'll show you a little bit of that tomorrow. The most important person in education, or one of the most important people, are really not the content, but the deliverer of the content. I think we've all been in cases where the content is amazing, but the professor not so amazing, and we didn't have the best experience, or vice versa, the content was not that great, but we had an amazing professor, and we had the most powerful experience. So I really believe the next stage is the delivery of that content and the delivery of an experience. Because like Professor Campbell said, we already have the content. Your students can get it all on Google and YouTube videos. So how we deliver and facilitate that experience is going to be very, very critical. And we need better tools to be able to do that. Oops, okay. And so this was what we were just talking about. Even though we've evolved, it's still primarily, we went from chalkboard to Zoom. But chalkboard to Zoom is still primarily one way. So the opportunity is, how do we make it interactive and social? Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay. And so whenever we're designing any kind of, this is meant to be overwhelming. And as teachers, as professors, as content creators, there are probably like 10 to 15, 20 steps that we're all taking. In fact, we probably use 6 to 8 different pieces of software every single time we do this. Even probably the preparation of this conference, there's the emails that you got, then there was the agenda that you got, then there was the slides, and I think after this they're going to send you a link to the slides, and then there's probably a polling software they're going to use, etc., etc. Every single time we do this, it's a manual 20-step process. And then it's really difficult to replicate. And so I think the idea is, how do we then use technology to enable and empower each of us so that we can focus on the stuff that really matters, not the administrative stuff. And this is where technology, I don't believe, should be replacing humans, but should be supporting humans. And we talk about humanizing technology. So I think the idea is we're going to be able to, how do you integrate and empower that so the entire experience from pre-experience to post-experience embeds the tools that you need all in one place. Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah, to have everything in one place and not have to go search around for multiple tools in multiple places, but also for your teams, your administration. So I think with that, we're really thinking about how we evolve the experience from just kind of one-way communication into multi-social, interactive, user-generated content. And then I'm just going to wrap up with this because I think my 5 minutes is up. It's really around transformation and how we design transformation that leverages science and research. And so that's the science and research of how we learn, andragogy. So andragogy, the science of how adults learn. We are actually, I think we are gifting the entire community a $500 scholarship to get certified in instructional design as it applies to micro-learning, because the formats are different. And so we invite all of you to take advantage of that scholarship to basically learn the andragogy. It's not about the technology, it's about the approach to learning that's really important. And then you take behavior design, gamification, and nudging technology. So what you can do when you think about technology is you can now make it easier to create nudging, which changes behavior. Ultimately, transformation comes from daily behaviors. I had the privilege Friday of talking to Our Daily Bread, which Nobi was inspired by, because Our Daily Bread is about daily tasks, daily actions that we take, which will then transform our minds, which will transform our lives. So we want to build that in and leverage tech to build in gamification, to encourage our students to continue to learn and faculty to continue to learn and grow. So with that, I'm open to questions and look forward to learning with you. Thank you.
Right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Arun. I'm truly honored to be here, to be honest. When I was first invited, I was a little intimidated, but bear with me. It's a very difficult topic, technology. So I'm essentially an engineer who became a youth pastor, entrepreneur, startup co-founder, a bunch of other things. I'm still in the ministry. I work with technology, I work with digital applications, and such. Right? So I'm the founder of Waymaker. I'm also the city director of Faith Tech, Kyunghwa, which is a ministry about faith and technology. So technology. Yep, let's go to the evolution of technology. The industrial revolutions. If you look at history, the first industrial revolution, it was all about mechanical power, the steam engine, the invention of the steam engine. Now here's the thing, people tend to think that the revolution here was about the technology. It was about steam engine. It isn't. Right? There's nothing revolutionary about steam engine. It's just boiling water, collecting the steam, and releasing the pressure to move an object. The revolution was not about the steam engine, the revolution was about the impact of the technology on mankind. And in this case, transportation and travel. The steam engine revolutionized travel, connected cities and civilizations. People mingled. That was the revolution. And like that, the second industrial revolution, electrical power. The power grid, the assembly line. It was about productivity. Now with electricity and the power grid and all those things, you can work at night with a light bulb. You can assemble an assembly line and significantly increase your rate of output for the same amount of input put. So it was a productivity revolution. The third one, computational power, one of my favorite ones. The fact that mankind could realize that by heating up sand, silica, sand becomes a conductor of electricity. And when you cool it down, it becomes an insulator. It doesn't conduct electricity. That one discovery, you apply heat to sand, it conducts electricity. They realize they can manipulate the flow of electricity and come up with logic circuits and all these buzzwords, microprocessors, processing power. They invented computers, machines, even used that to put a man on the moon. And today we have significantly a lot more processing power at the palm of our hands. And what do we do with it? We like and comment and share. Right? It's the truth. But today, the fourth industrial revolution, this is a whole different game. It's about cognitive power. You see, the first three were essentially sort of like that machines are an extension of man's ability to do things. But the fourth one is a bit more. It's machines being an extension of man's ability to learn and do things. You've got artificial intelligence, data, and the suite of technologies. But the impact on us is crazy. Machines are now relating, understanding, comprehending, recognizing. Driverless cars, Tesla. Your phone listens to you. Do you know you can search for a photo by just typing out a word? How is this happening? Because of cognitive power. It's changed the way we live. And some of the changes that I want to discuss very briefly right now is this. It's changed the way we interact with information. It's changed the way we interact with people. And it's changed the way we interact with our environment. I mean, look at information. You all recognize these platforms, right? YouTube, TikTok. I personally don't use TikTok, so yeah. But look at YouTube and TikTok. So information all this while has always been about accessibility and availability. Making information available and accessible to the masses. That was the big goal. That was what we celebrated. But today it's beyond that. It's about the consumability. You see, on YouTube, you go, you search, and you watch. YouTube is essentially this library of video content. But how does TikTok work? It doesn't work that way. You open the app, even if you don't have an account, it starts showing you videos. It doesn't wait for you to search and watch. It's suggesting content to you. How does it do it? Using an AI algorithm that is aimed at learning you, understanding your personality, figuring out, would this video work? Would this content work for you? And showing more of it to you. And that's very crucial because it makes us redefine the way we look at information's, the spread of information. Today, the success of information being shared and received by the audience is no longer determined by its availability or its accessibility. It's about how it's being consumed. Which means having content available does not mean job done. And I think that's one of the key reasons why, especially during the lockdown, a lot of churches, a lot of my friends' churches as well, they started seeing that when they went on YouTube Live and Facebook Live for their sermons, they started losing engagement. Because having the sermon or the lesson or the content available does not mean it's being consumed. That's something very important for us to take note of. The second one, our interaction with people. That's a fairly good-looking young girl, I would assume. Okay, no one agrees with me, but this is actually a chatbot. Right? You can't find it anymore, it's been a few years. So when I say the way we interact with people, I don't mean connecting with people online on Facebook, social networking sites. I'm talking about the interaction between an artificial person. I mean, people like us, okay, I myself included, when I was born in the 80s, I saw technology evolve from your Nokia brick phones to your smartphones. But think about generations of people born in the last 10 to 15 years. They've been born in an age of Industry 4.0. 5G frequencies, 4G frequencies, AI, and these are all norm for them. Think about them growing up. This generation growing up, having the challenges of not being able to differentiate between a real person and an artificial person. Because this generation communicates online. And online, there are both real person and artificial person. Think about that, right? Look at the chat messages between a real person. Oh, why something wrong? Okay, a real person and this AI bot, Ru. This AI was trained to have the personality of a Bollywood-loving North Indian girl. It's like they trained her for me. I'm just kidding. But look at the chat messages, if you can see. This is an AI chatting with a person, and you look at how the human nuances come up, the mistakes. It sounds like a real person. I did a demo of chatting with this AI to a group of school students a few years back, and they thought it was my girlfriend. Until I told them this is actually an AI, and they freaked out. This is what's happening now, and moving forward it's going to get worse. And finally, the way we interact with our surroundings is a very common sight globally, right? You go to restaurants today, you see young families, everybody is hooked to the phone. We are so addicted to the 6-inch real estate. That's our world. It's two-dimensional. And we're stuck on it. We're hooked on it. We're disengaged with our surroundings. we're disconnected socially. And the tech giants in the world are looking to build a three-dimensional virtual world. Two-dimensional itself already like this. Three-dimensional, people won't come out from their house. And they already started experimenting about it, the metaverse and all those things during the lockdown. What does this mean? The trend points to people increasingly wanting to stay disconnected because they can just hop onto the virtual world and connect with everyone. Because in the virtual world, virtually nothing is impossible. You can look however you want. You can fly. You can do whatever you want. This is quite crazy, something we need to take note of because it changes the way we do church moving forward. So, in summary, it is really important for us to rise up, to take note of these things, but most importantly, not to quickly jump at solutioning, deciding whether to embrace these technologies and these platforms. No. The important part here is to figure out what is the right way to approach it. And that's something that I'm going to be diving deep into in my session tomorrow as well. Approaching these things from an outcome perspective, so that we don't get caught up in the chaos and the confusion, and we know our priorities and the outcomes that we want. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's hard to speak right after two very powerful speakers, and coming to talking about digital turn, I bring my notes on a piece of paper. So, so this is a little intimidating, but I'll do my best. To finish my presentation within the 5 minutes, I'll have to depend on my piece of paper, so please bear with me. I really appreciated Dr. Campbell's thoughtful and informative lecture. I especially appreciated the 3 suggestions she had for ATA because I think it applies to the counseling field as well. And in my response, I'd like to share a little bit about the digital turn that's happening in the counseling field since COVID-19 pandemic. Transitioning from the in-person, face-to-face counseling to online real-time video counseling, which I'll henceforth call online counseling for short. But before I do, I want to mention that non-face-to-face counseling is not a new phenomenon and have existed way before the pandemic. So examples of this type of counseling are online counseling, text counseling, and telephone counseling. However, it's evident that the pandemic has accelerated the digital turn in the counseling field, and we're now facing a transformed landscape that we didn't even imagine before the pandemic. So like most of our universities and graduate schools, my school, Torch Trinity Graduate School, has a counseling center. With the outbreak of the pandemic, our counseling center really struggled to transition from in-person counseling to online. The very first difficult decision we had to make was, in fact, is it okay to do online counseling? Will it be effective? So once we decided to start online counseling, and that actually came with much hesitation, the next question was, what kind of system and structure do we need to provide to the counselors? For instance, what platform are we to use for online counseling? What kind of equipment do we need? And what kind of digital literacy education is needed for all this to happen? We also have to figure out how to help counselors and clients alike to have access to the needed equipment and technical support. Now that online counseling is given, retrospectively, it's interesting that we even hesitated to move on to online counseling. But at that time, it was really difficult to judge whether to transition to online counseling or not. I have to say, many of our counselors at my center still prefer in-person counseling to online. However, our center now provides both in-person as well as face-to-face. in person as well as online. So with a digital turn in my field, there's been a growing research on counseling. And the research is still mixed in its results. So research shows that on average, counselors, compared to clients, have a more negative attitude towards online counseling. Many struggle with technical difficulties related to an online platform, and they also tend to find it difficult to form a working alliance with the clients and read their emotions. On the other hand, which is interesting, clients, compared to counselors, tend to have a more positive attitude and expectations for online counseling, and they show a higher degree of satisfaction. Research also shows that there are both pros and cons for online counseling, as you can imagine. One of the biggest strengths is easy access. This is especially true for clients with high levels of social anxiety, who have difficulties physically coming to the counseling center. For them, the fact that they can do counseling within their familiar environment is a very big plus. On the other hand, one of the weaknesses of online counseling is that counselors can only see the faces of the client on screen and cannot see their whole body. This limits counselors to catch on to the body language of the client. This can be problematic because research shows that body cues are more important than facial expression in recognizing emotions. So counselors need to verbally ask and confirm more frequently with the clients how they're feeling and to understand where they're at. There was actually a time, There was actually a time we hoped that online counseling was an interim and that we would all go back to 100% in-person counseling. However, it's now clear that we can't change the trend of the new normal, whether we like it or not. And in fact, in the counseling field, the digital turn is moving a step further. And now there are talks as well as pilot tests of metaverse counseling using avatars in the virtual world. Now that's still mind-boggling to me. I read a research study that showed avatar-assisted therapy to be effective for substance use disorders in group counseling. Another trend is that commercial companies are creating mobile applications that uses AI, not humans, but AI to provide counseling. I think metaverse counseling and mobile applications for counseling are related to what Dr. Campbell's point about convergent practices. Counseling is beginning to be more multi-sourced, multi-site, and there will be more opportunities for self-directed counseling by digital tools. These new trends are sometimes, we need to be aware of these trends because I think it may also affect the theological education. One last point I'd like to make is that there's a stack of ethical and legal issues that's related to this digital turn that we haven't even begun to sufficiently touch on. For instance, there's the issue of confidentiality on online counseling, as well as the qualification of the counselors, and also the issue of how commercial companies may use online counseling data for their secondary processing purposes without actually people being fully aware of it. So these are just to name a few. But if we start to think about metaverse counseling, that brings a whole different layer to this problem, because currently the metaverse is a space beyond reach of the law. So, so where do we go from here? Right? We're at the crossroad for either utopia or a dystopia. We are collectively responsible for future direction and development of this digital turn. That's why I believe this ATA General Assembly is so important, and I'm thankful that we're all here today and throughout this week to prayerfully collaborate in figuring out what our next step is. Thank you.
Hi everyone, how are you doing tonight? Good. So, on behalf of Terry Theological College, our president, principal, Reverend Kyunghwa, want to sending blessings to you all. And actually, I'm from Toronto, but Terry is based in Vancouver. But we are online seminars, so reach out to global students. We have a lot of Asian students actually, and I myself had a lot of background from Alliance Bible Seminary, as I brought up there, so there are a lot of Asian connections. So so great to come here to learn from you and learn together with all the very great panelists. Thank you for your invitation. All right, this doesn't count 5 minutes, hopefully. All right, so theology. So we all know that our human brain can only take 4 to 7 digit chunks, and especially I'm the last panelist. So why don't we come to reflect on digital theology and digital theological education, and responding to our panelists and Dr. Campbell. So I come up with an acronym called digital, okay, DIGITAL. Just write 7 digit, all right? Okay, DIGITAL, digital. So I hope that we can, by this acronym, we can remember something that's important in terms of theology and how we make sense of this digital world. D stands for define. So define was digital theology. So according to a study in 2019 by Peter Phillips, Jonas Skoberg, so this is a digital center, research center. So they define digital theology in 4 aspects. Digital theology can be seen as a pedagogical tool to teach, in terms of teaching theology. And we all know that we are using it in this pandemic world or post-pandemic world even. But how and why we continue, or we discontinue, or we do hybrid? Why? Are we seeing theological growth in terms of understanding who God is and what is made up of as a human being? So when we are very excited about technology, we want to reflect on how theology plays a role here. And another good thing is digital technology actually opens up methods for theological research. For example, my doctoral research is on Augustine's City of God, looking at how emotions play in that book, 22 books actually. So imagine if I have to look up the paper book and search for emotional words, sadness, sorrow, or happiness. Wow, it's impossible. But with digital means, there's actually an application, search engine for patristic studies that can allow me to go up to all the Augustine corpus, including all books of Augustine, in order to find these words. So actually, there's a lot of potential in combining technology and theology in this research. And third thing is we know digital culture, how we transform and shape our theological reflections, and how we understand the principles of doing theology, and what ethical issues come up when we engage in technology. Just like our speakers, our panelists already said, metaverse, reality. What is reality? Is virtual reality real or not? So this is a lot of definition we have to define. What is at stake now? We cannot just haphazardly go into technology and embrace everything, or just follow the crowd. We need to think carefully why we are doing things we are doing. So now we don't need to flip the. I cut a lot of slides because I only have 5 minutes. So I is identity. How do you see yourself differently in this digital world? That you, meaning as pastors, as theological educators, as missionaries even, and servant of God, how do you see yourself? How do your sheep in your church see themselves? IG, Instagram, very, very popular in the next generation. How do we pastor them? How do we teach them to follow God when the image is so attractive to create a good image, good look? When I have a good meal, I show it in IG, but I may be hiding something inside. So image of God, IG stand for, not image of God, sorry, stand for Instagram. But I hope we have a good reflection on that. So ecclesia, church, we already said church online or online church, different. Church online can be temporary, right, because of COVID. But if you're doing online church, it's a determined action, a decision to have a space in for example, metaverse or in an online platform, not just Zoom, not just Zoom. It's something in another plane. Do we want to engage in it? If your church engage in it, why? And if you're a theological educator, you're a seminary, your pastor is struggle whether to do it or not. How do you guide them? So there's a lot of issues. Even seminaries, they are thinking, whether to do online, continue to do online, or just a hybrid, or in person. How to do student formation, spiritual reflection, spirituality. What does it mean in this digital world? So a lot of things to consider. These 7 aspects actually is tied together if you think about it. Godliness. G stands for godliness. How do we promote godliness? And we have worship expert here in our midst. How do we worship? Do we continue to worship online? And how do we do it? How do we cultivate godliness in the digital world? And then the I stands for influence. Influence. By influence, what I mean is we always think, oh yes, digital world is good, right? We can reach global students. We can engage in global mission. We can do global education. We can do virtual pastoral care, virtual counseling, virtual evangelism. Wow, looks so good. But please don't forget, the world also wants to influence the people of God. It is not just one direction. It is a spiritual battle. So for that, we need theology. We need sound theology based on the Bible to counter these cultural battles. While we engage in culture, we are also tempted to follow the way of the world. So let's be careful about that. And T stands for thoughts. Let's give a quiz, short quiz. Think different. What slogan is this? Which company has this slogan? For think different. Anyone has iPhone or iPad? Yes, it was slogan for Apple. Think different. Do the right thing. It's a slogan for Google. So these tech companies, they give us a lot of facilities, a lot of technological convenience, which is good. But remember, all these has a price that or give us a space to challenge us to use our freedom wisely or unwisely, or we can connect with God, connect with evil, connect with others. But what are we connecting? And why are we connecting with the objects that we are connecting? So remember, Augustine says, we have to learn to enjoy God and use the things that He created. Okay, but not the vice versa, not to use God to enjoy the things He created. So final two is A. A stands for anthropology. I will say this, you are what you click. So have you heard about you are what you read, you are what you write, you are what you click. Okay, remember when we click, we go internet, we go do something online, that reflects our human nature. And our human nature can fool us. And even reality and community takes you to a new whole horizon. While we attempt to embrace it, we need to constantly ask, does that undermine our humanity? Does that undermine the theological anthropology that God creates us for? So finally, the L is lives or lives. I would suggest this as my conclusion. While digital technology is so good, so give us a lot of opportunities, let's not forget there's also challenges and threats. Theology of work and rest is important in this digital world. We need to learn to rest and think about why we work 24 hours. There's no boundary. Once you get engaged in technology, if you don't set theological boundary, you can keep working. Anyone's on screen time is more than 14 hours. You cannot go more than 24 hours a day. Yeah, I admit myself. Yeah, I'll do that. So it can consume your soul if you're not careful. So I don't need to pose a very glimpse, negative, dark conclusion, but I would say that above all else, guard your heart. For everything you do flows from it. From the Bible, Proverbs 4:32. Let us learn to embrace opportunities and challenges of digital technology and theological education with the fear of God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like for the panelists, we have just a little bit of time for Q&A, and there is a mic in the center here, and we just invite any of you who have questions to come up to the mic because the camera will be focusing on you as this event is live streamed, so we want to hear your response. So be bold, be brave, just come up and ask your question. And in the meantime, I have a question for any one of the four of you. Now, Dr. Heidi Campbell says that digital technology has forced a re-examination of what makes a faith community and the true expression of religion. So she says, just because we use social media, just because we are networking with people, that doesn't mean we have a church or an institution that has a social experience and that we are a community. So my question to you then is, what makes community in this digital world? What makes for true connections? Anyone?
Interesting. I think it's a really great question. When we think about community, sometimes I think with social media, we have the false perception of community, and we have the false perception of connection if I have X thousand followers or likes or whatever, and that's not real. And so I think that the idea is comes from the level of depth and vulnerability and trust. So if I share with you something very personal, then my wall comes down, then your wall will come down. Technology can be used as a very powerful platform for that, especially for people who are introverted, who may not be as extroverted and may not share it vocally, but we have found that they might be more willing to share in text and share what their real thoughts are. But if given the question and if asked to go deeper. Whereas if we keep the conversation superficial, just like if we meet and I just say, hey, how's the weather? Then you will say the weather is good. But if I ask you, how did you come to know the Lord? That is a deeper question that will require a deeper response. So I think a lot of it is in the power of the questions that we're asking in our communities to foster deeper human connection.
Anyone else? Arun?
I want to conquer it.
For community.
Oh, sorry.
What makes real community, real connections?
I think my take is that I concur with so young, and I think that real community and real connections, they are real when they've got an emotional element to it, which is usually absent in the digital world. You can't show real care digitally. You can hashtag pray for country X or RIP or something, but that's not real care. I think I'm reminded of a story by this anthropologist Margaret Mead, and her students asked her what is the first true sign of civilization, and she said that a healed femur bone. So they dug out a bone, a femur bone that was actually cared for, and that showed that in the days ago, a long time back, somebody actually got injured and people cared for the person, so the bone was healed, and that was the first true sign of civilization. Now that kind of care is what makes an actual connection, right? You can't do that online. Okay, it's good. It's getting interesting.
No, I'm sorry. I agree with your point, but I just have to respectfully disagree because we saw more deeper, authentic communications in not all cases, in some cases. So, for example, during COVID, we have a global team. We have a team in Europe and US and Asia. When we do Zoom calls, half of them turn their camera off. Yeah, so we had meetings all the time, but they don't share anything personal about themselves. Because we were worried about their mental and emotional health, because some of them were having issues, we created this thing called the Daily Pulse. In the Daily Pulse, we asked questions like, hey, if some of them were really fun things, like please share like what your work environment looks like right now. And all of a sudden, these people who never turned their camera on Zoom, all of a sudden were very, very active and sharing photos of their plants, their hobbies, their dogs, their cats, their children. I finally saw pictures of my colleagues' children, which are obviously things that they care about and value most, in ways that I could not otherwise because they didn't feel that environment, that modality was the best for them. And so I got to know my colleagues, some of them much better. And the second story is, we heard of this Bible study group. There's a women's fellowship group that had a meeting for years in person. Same thing happened. There are the outgoing people in the women's group, and then there are those who weren't. All of a sudden, because they were engaging kind of in the app every single day, reflecting on the Word of God and then sharing their testimony of how they were living out that Word, they got to know each other at a much deeper level. So when they did meet in person, it was like they felt they knew each other and they had a deeper human connection. So this is when technology can be used intentionally. So it's not a tech issue or digital issue, it's the design issue. It's how you use the technology, I think, that is more important, right? And so that, there's two stories, not all the cases, but obviously it's still awesome to have, face-to-face life.
Yeah, good question. I think, anthropology, I think I mentioned this one, theological anthropology, is when your soul is really present, there to communicate, the communication and there's community between us. Like, I remember when I teach online, we pray together with students. Students share. I invite them to share that how they're doing this week, and they share some real stories. And the painful share, not just sharing, like really go deep the sharing. So something even it's over Zoom, you can feel the connection, and there I think real community happens.
So there's a research done on counseling, and in the study, they asked clients if they pretended that there were. So bottom line, clients would prefer doing counseling with AIs rather than human beings. Why? Right? Why? Because they don't judge. So we go back, I think you all made a wonderful point, and I totally agree with you. But then I ask, can we make communities with AIs? They ask the appropriate questions, right? And they're bringing up the real issues that they're interested in. And so, of course, the AIs aren't that developed yet, but it soon will be. And so we have to ask, what is a community? And I think, I don't know, I'm still struggling to figure out myself, but I think one of the things is, if we can accept the other person as they are, because that's what they're afraid of. What happens if I tell the truth? What happens if I tell my deepest secrets and the other person judges me? So if they feel that they're in a safe holding environment where they can be themselves and it can be accepted, I think that may be a real community.
Wow, such a great answer. Again, any question from the floor, because our time is nearly up. But I think I have one space for one question at least. Yes, please come to the mic.
Question for Aaron on the fourth industrial revolution. Basically, you said it was AI was the fourth industrial revolution, but I wanted you to, if you could, say something about where do you think blockchain fits into that? You probably have to define blockchain too.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think, well, just to maybe correct my own self, artificial intelligence is not new as a scientific innovation. It's been around for years, decades, right, as a mathematical theory. It's just that it became popular and widely used in the last 10, 15 years or so because of data. Right? AI is just a set of algorithms. Without data and processing power, it doesn't work. Right? It's just fancy tools. But with more and more products and services being invented, the smartphone and stuff, the internet. So we have a lot of data, we've got a lot of processing power. I think the unsung heroes actually the hardware guys. They build processing power to enable all these things to actually happen. So yeah, so it's fourth industrial revolution in terms of applications, not in terms of the technologies themselves. I think blockchain is interesting. I'm not a blockchain expert myself. I'll attempt to explain it in the way that I understand. I have a feeling that you probably know blockchain more than myself.
Yeah, but I think you explain it probably better.
Okay.
You're a good speaker.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, so much pressure. if only I was an AI, right? If only I was an AI. Emotionless responses. So I think the essence of blockchain as a technology is all about safeguarding information, right? So the way the technology works is information is no longer centralized. It's not kept in one location, which is prone to damages, loss of information, people hacking and taking advantages of it. First of all, it's decentralized. You take information, you break it, you encrypt it, and then you break it into bits and pieces, and then you distribute it to everyone on the network. That's the first thing. And every subsequent incoming information is tied to the previous information and encrypted again. So what happens is that if you've got, let's say, a transaction, or let's say I bought this phone. The first time I bought this phone, in reality I had a receipt, right? Now I can recreate the receipt, put a fake price, go online and on Carousel or something and sell it for something else. There's no way for people to actually verify if this was actually a legitimate phone or if it was actually bought by me in a specific location, because there's only one receipt, it was owned by me. But if I bought it on a blockchain-based system, then the system stores that information and distributes it to everyone on the system in an encrypted technology. Which means if I want to hack that receipt and tamper it, the system just rejects the whole effort. Because it's the replica of it exists everywhere. Am I confusing anyone? I hope not. Please, I'm sorry. And every subsequent sale of the same product, second hand, third hand, maybe the fifth person who buys it eventually, they are able to track back every previous transaction up to the point of my first purchase. And I think that's the beauty of blockchain. It's data and information integrity, making it really difficult for people to tamper with it. I hope that explains, or rather,
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you. We have to come to a close for tonight's session. Most of you have traveled long ways and you're tired. I know questions are all there. Feel free to continue this conversation. Feel free to grab one of them for a lunch or a dinner and talk with them. Let us remember heart. Let us remember medium. Let us remember to be safe places for people. And let us remember that there is good and there can be distractions. All right? And so we will close for tonight, but there are two announcements that